Seriously.
I don't know, but
Come on.
the office.
We're going
As
live,
long as
guys.
it's big a document too, I don't know if you felt like that when you're going through it.
Oh, it was light reading. What are you talking about?
I was gonna say, what?
Hi, OB. Can you hear us? All right. And we are streaming. Okay, great. Well, if that, we don't know if Tony's going to be joining, but we have a quorum. So it is 4:30 and we are going to kick off. OB, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I hear you.
Wait, we can't hear you. Why can't we?
Can't hear me, huh?
No, he's not. He's,
Same problem last time.
shoot. Hold on, OB, that might be on our end.
She's in Somebody had the same problem last time.
Can we figure out how we can hear him?
Is there a speaker on our end that's not turned on? Yeah, where's the speaker for us?
Okay,
You
In a-
can actually go to the little dots at the bottom. Where's the little dots?
no. Yeah, to the right of the microphone that has output settings. Yeah. Speaker, if we,
So go to the system, go to display speaker, extender. Up that one there.
nope, down.
Yep.
Okay,
How
OB.
about now, Bob?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hey,
Okay, now we will call to order at 4:31 to the Planning Commission. In attendance, we have Rick York, Makeda, is it Barclay? Yes, my brain. Emily Campbell and Bob O'Brien. And we will begin with citizens to be heard. It doesn't look like we have any additional participants in the Zoom. And if we need to, we'll come back to citizens to be heard later in the meeting. We are going to have a hearing today on the general plan. Are there any ex parte communications to share or disclosures? Okay. With that, we'll move on to the minutes from our last meeting. And I actually did have two comments. Let me find them. One was specific to the water updates for the general plan. It was just written strangely, and I was trying to remember what the actual conclusion is. With these updates, elements in the general plan will not be recommending elements, but instead but regulated and required. I just thought it'd be useful to just remind ourselves how that folded in. We can maybe come back to that, but
Yeah, there's two, sorry, if I could just say something. There's two sections. I think it's acceptable. There's two sections in there. The water one is one, and there's some other housing elements that are there. The housing one, I think there's a special bill that was introduced. I tried to include as much as I could, but no, the other one is resource management. Resource management's under redraft right now with the state, so it's kind of in motion. There's three areas of this. And so I tried to capture as much as I could. I don't know if you noticed that.
yes.
Housing one needed a lot more data. You need to have assured housing. You need to have a housing continuum, which I think we already had most of that. And then the water one actually had to do with, the water, the data, of course, which is a moving target in some ways because we don't always know. And then how you're going to manage it over time. So those are great general planning things. And then the other one is the resource management one, which is identifying a number of the resources. And I think we have a lot of information there, but the state's still updating it. So it's hard to keep up to those kinds of things without saying we'll keep up. We'll just redraft it over the next 6 months.
Well, just in case anyone else read the minutes as close as we did, I just thought it was worth revisiting that because I know that that's something of particular focus. The last thing I wanted to call out is just under future considerations. The specific thing that Steve recommended is that we consider adopting recognition of the indigenous populations and cultures in the area for any small area plan or work that we're doing, again, to just extend awareness past the white settler, modern cultural tourism things here in town. So it was listed as consider using this format, and I just wanted to explicitly hit on that again because I did think it was a good recognition.
And I think we can just grab the historic preservation committees when they finish it, right? Just grab that.
The
Yeah, because
acknowledgement
they're
statement.
working on it. The
Yeah.
land acknowledgement. Yeah.
And that the acknowledgement statement will come in implementation strategy. So that'll change the way we engage people. And our public engagement strategy will do the same thing.
There was the acknowledgement statement, but explicitly it was anytime we're looking at the value or usage of areas, considering the fact that, historical usage predates 1950.
And hence the reason implementation is a big part of it.
I just wanted to catch that. Were there any other comments or revisions to be suggested for the minutes?
Emily, the one that you mentioned, and let me just go to it. I guess it's the one on page 4 under Utah State Legislature updates, right? But I had trouble with actually the ending of the sentence says elements, but instead, but elements, but regulated and required. Is that, am I reading it? It sounds awkward.
I think it was poorly stated. And so it sounds like the grammar may have just been a little funky, but the intent is that the elements that are required will be introduced as they're updated and in subsequent phases of the general plan update. Did I capture that correctly? So,
And so you're suggesting that change in the minutes.
I think for the record, it might be worth taking a stab at reformatting that grammar before we pop it into a filing cabinet somewhere.
I would agree. Okay.
All right. Is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve the minutes as corrected.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second. All right. So we have a motion from OB and seconded by Maketa to approve the minutes from March 28th, 2022. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Ben, are you on to listen in, or did you want to make a comment during citizens to be heard?
Totally just listening in. Thank you.
Totally just listening in. Perfect. All right. Okay, so that will move us on to discussion of the Planning Commission vacancy. Our Planning Commissioner, Josie, was appointed in the interim position on the Grand County Commission during the last meeting, and that was effective immediately. So I don't think we need a motion. We just need to direct staff to notice the vacancy. And if we notice it, we still have time to get into this week's paper. So that should mean we are looking at applicants probably at our next meeting. Will that give us enough
Deadline
time?
for the TI is tomorrow, isn't
Yeah.
it? Aren't you TI?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's not like my thing, but I had.
I think it's the same for both of them.
It would be great if I don't know what the noticing period for the Planning Commission needs to be. It may be that we can't review applicants at our next meeting, but we need to wait to the meeting following.
Probably. Yeah. But their next meeting is 2 weeks from today, so we should have that time.
Okay, well, let's confirm and tell your friends, colleagues, neighbors to please apply for the vacancy. And that will be noticed and details will be on Grand County website and Moab Grand County Connects. Throw it on there as well. All right. Anything else for that
Lauren.
action item? Yeah, I guess, well, during staff updates, you can introduce Lauren. So we'll move on to the County Commission update.
Okay, well, I don't have very much. As you mentioned, Josie is now a county commissioner, so that was great. She was unanimously voted in. You probably know that we denied the rezone of 4400 Spanish Valley Drive unanimously. And I think people gave some really great reasons as to why. And one that really stood out was Kevin stated that we really don't want to just start giving away density, right? We want it to have some purpose and some meaning for our community. So that was denied. And the only other thing, you asked me to ask Chrissy about House Bill 82. Was that the ADU, the internal and external? Do you remember? But she never got back to me. So she said she would look that bill over and remember, because it was like, I can't remember.
It was like they weren't specifying for inside, they were only specifying for outside.
Right.
The question was, what do we need to do?
Right.
Can we, based on, this is what, and I think it was actually a list, Lisa brought it up.
Okay.
So based off the language of the bill that passed the state legislature,
Right.
do we have the ability to regulate internal ADUs in the case where a property already has an external ADU on site?
Okay.
Can we, do we have the ability to regulate density in that way, given the language of the bill? I think
Okay.
something to that end, because that was uncertain.
Right. Okay.
And that's something that with the land use code updates, we're explicitly looking at.
Right.
That's on our list, but I
Right.
think we
Right.
can't, I think we can't, well, we have the power to do it, but I don't think the state's mandating. The state's not mandating it, we're allowing for it, we're making it something that the county can't review. So, because if you're adding, they're only dealing with one ADU, so an accessory, one accessory dwelling unit, not another one.
So just because of the mic, your interpretation is that there is a requirement to allow an ADU, but not prohibiting us from capping the number of ADUs that can be on our property. That was your understanding. Okay. So I think we need to clarify that
Yeah.
and just make
Okay.
sure.
Yeah. I'll bug her again about that. So, and then we had another noise reboot meeting. This one, we're still not kind of ready to do anything. We're not really ready to add more stakeholders, more input. We've really just been meeting with the sheriff and like, where do we sit? And there's not a lot going on. I'll just put it that way. Is that wrong? I know.
Well, enforcement is, sorry, I could just.
Right. Yeah.
So we had a great little working group meeting in here. I pretty well.
Does it?
Yeah.
Obi, can you hear him okay when?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing okay.
Okay, good.
So I think it's backing off from the enforcement side of things, because the bill really retracts a lot of the reasonableness question.
Yeah.
Is really
Yeah.
the standard to measure by.
Right.
And because the reasonable question is still, we're still determining that, it's really the enforcement part of it, and testing is not going forward the way we had hoped.
Right.
But at the same time, we're trying to collaborate and work together, especially with August and economic development. Right. And touching base with the major stakeholders to move ahead with something a bit more collaborative.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe we're collaborative. but
Yeah. And then I guess this overall hope that the industry will just start producing quieter vehicles. I mean, a lot of these manufacturers have, but a company like Polaris is not going to. They're not showing. They're not at all inclining towards going in that direction, but others have. So I don't know. The one thing that Steve that did stand out to me is he said that now he's hearing from, he's now had Emery County, their sheriff is really struggling with them. And King County, their sheriff is really struggling with them. So the positive is that if we have other rural counties, not just Grand County, because pretty much state legislature obviously isn't real receptive to listening to us. But if we have other rural counties saying we're struggling too, that we'll have a leg to stand on. So that was a positive to hear Steve say that. And it's interesting because the Green River just had the watermelon crawl, and I talked to many citizens there, and they said it was pure hell.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's that. Yeah.
Well, coalition is always better than going at it alone.
No,
so.
for sure. For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think August is more in the pointy end now, at least economic development, and collaborating with the stakeholders.
Yeah.
Good.
Where that's going.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank you for the
I
update.
think that's it.
All right.
Had
Any
a good
questions?
discussion.
Oh.
We could just throw something in there
I have
too.
one more
I think,
thing.
Land use code issues. There was a bit of to and fro with Christina around what the priority should be and how the commission should be weighing in.
Right.
But I think we ended up with some pretty good marching orders.
Yeah. Good. That's good.
There's a note from Ben in the chat about this, I believe. There's a note from Ben in the chat. I think you commented on what we're talking about. It says department, so.
We are organizing noise meetings soon. I heard economic development mentioned, and John needs to project. John needs to use his diaphragm in speaking to.
The last thing was, once again, So on the April 19th meeting at 3, Mark Stilson will be presenting. The goal is to have a quarterly update from him, hopefully to have the community more involved and engaged so that he'll do a presentation and then hopefully just Q&A, right? And so hopefully get that information out to citizens and some really good information. He's just going to start with like, what's our groundwater resources? What are our aquifer resources? And how are we monitoring
And
them?
those are open to the public and available for
Yeah.
people to attend if
Yeah.
they want to learn more.
And I'm pushing on Mallory to get that word out.
Fantastic.
You know, we don't have a marketing director or whatever you would call, I don't know what the term is.
So you're
Communications.
So if our
director.
local newspaper were to attend one
That
of
would
our
be
meetings,
great.
one of the
She's
things we
already
might
talked to
mention
me
in
about
when
it.
are these meetings? Fabulous.
'Cause I think it'd be great. He's just so, you know, knowledgeable and just letting everybody ask him questions. And it'd be great.
That's
That's it.
wonderful. All right. Any questions for Trish? All
We've got
right.
a workshop coming up though, and the commissions, 2 commissions together in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll come back to dates. I got hung up on
Right.
dates last time
I
too.
know.
My internal catalog calendar is never.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to staff updates, and we have a new member of staff here. If you want to introduce.
Yeah, Lauren started as a Vista officially today, and Laura is officially on. So, do you hear me okay, Ben? I don't need a thumbs up or something. Lauren.
Yes, that's
is-
an improvement. Yes.
Thank you, Ben.
So Lauren is stepping in to Laura's role, being adapted to some degree. She may want to say a few words about how thrilling it is to be with us.
Would you like to say a few words?
It's thrilling to be with
Oh,
you.
Wow.
let the record show.
Excellent.
Fairly overwhelming.
Welcome. It's nice to have you
Yeah.
here.
Really excited. Very interesting stuff.
Great.
We're doing a lot of questions.
We're all in that phase.
Awesome.
We're all in the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We all always have lots of
Yeah.
questions.
Right.
Yeah, staff updates. We actually have another Vista potentially still online coming from Georgetown University. Noel is her name. I don't know if we mentioned this to you before or not. In August. So we had 2 Vistas planned, and Lauren's actually just like Laura. She's been shared with Maddie and Trails. So she'll be out in the field working on trails, which she'll be thrilled to do too. She'll be just thrilled to work with everybody. So. And then Noelle is going to be working in her office. And also the other thing that's on Lauren's plate is an age-friendly plan. So taking a look at, which I don't know if you know about those, but they're pretty canned kind of background things. You take a look at mobility, different uses. For example, community exercise equipment. If you've seen those kinds of things.
Oh,
yeah.
No, we don't.
We should have.
Pretty neat.
That-
We don't.
oh, I love those.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
No, I love it when I see those though. They're great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They're
so
really cool.
age-friendly deal, it's a kind of deals with the continuum of age. So it's more like youth and seniors tend to match the same kinds of mobility challenges. So once you do it for kids, you're doing it for almost everybody.
That's cool.
It's almost like the universal access thing. Once you
Great.
put a
Yeah.
ramp in, everybody uses it.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's awesome.
Speaking of age inclusion, the other thing we were talking about before the meeting started was participation by younger members of our community. It'd be great to have that be something that the staff was able to look at as well.
So there's a seniors group that Sarah kind of, I don't want to say it this the wrong way, resurrected, I guess you could say, but over at the Grand Center. I forget what it was called, but it was formerly a standing committee. So they've started back up again. We don't have a youth group though, I don't think.
Right.
So that might be something to consider.
Very interested in helping with that.
Yeah, there's not a lot
That'd be
of
great.
like early 20-something engagement or even 20-something engagement.
Like the high school to
In high school, yeah.
just post college.
Yeah,
I think that
that-
age
that
range would
range
be
is not
wonderful
very
to have
involved.
involved. Great.
And so Jenna, anything else that you want to add? I know for projects.
We've got
yeah,
staff updates, land use code priorities. These are all in the staff update.
This time, just work to current projects, which is.
Yes.
We had a development review team meeting on Wednesday with King Creek, which is kind of 4th or 5th iteration. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think we'll probably bring a couple updates after that. After we discuss it to the team, so you guys probably don't really see preliminary plans at this time, but kind of a large project for you to at least have eyes on at some point.
Mhm.
I'm going to repeat that just because you're so far away. So you're working with a group on the Cane Creek development, and you'll bring an update to us after those meetings, just for those who couldn't hear Jenna. Okay, wonderful.
See, Jenna, do you think you could put the agenda up on there? I know it's nice looking at Bob, but
Here, John, I can.
yeah, I was
Share
just thinking.
screen, anyone can share screen, so if you have it up, if you want to share.
Oh, I'm not on the Zoom, unfortunately. Yeah, otherwise I would. OB, do you have your packet open? Could you share your agenda?
If I can remember how to do it, okay, and who knows what it'll go to when I try this. And I have this draft agenda. Let's see, I click on it. And then I'm going up to the top.
Perfect.
Very good.
Impressive.
Scroll down just
Way
a
to
little
go,
bit.
Bob.
Okay, so where are we?
So OB,
Staff updates.
yeah, scroll down just a little bit, Bob.
How's that?
Yep, to item 4. Thank you.
Okay,
Perfect.
so that's where we're at. Sorry.
Oh, very good.
Whoops.
Yeah, you'll be able to see participants.
Okay, so the Book Cliffs Small Area Plan, the SAP, kind of a bad acronym, I think. That is, as you know, we had a public hearing for that. We're proposing to, and I think we got pretty good buy-in, to not change the general plan in 2012, but to wait until we've got some good legs underneath the new one, and then make that change potentially between now and the final commission public hearing. And then we'd send it, we've already got a quote back from our consultant to kind of tweak it and fine tune it a bit more. And that way we're putting it into a document that's a lot more coherent rather than trying to redo it again later. Not much changing there. It's just the substance is there. It's just meshing it with the new plan. The timing might be a bit tight. We might have to delay the public hearing with the county commission. We'll just see how that goes. So I don't think we need anything from you, from the planning commission. I think it's just a matter of how it unfolds.
Great.
Unless we make some changes that we think is substantive enough that needs to come back to you. I don't think there are anything planned. And the land use code priorities for the county commission, there's an interim resolution to be considered by on May 3rd, and that's kind of moving ahead with the housing one. BAE economics is one I was just talking about briefly before the meeting. So that's that baseline study, taking a look at housing. We had a good meeting with them online on Friday. They got a lot of horsepower. In fact, I think they're just doing something with the city that was, I don't know if that was turned down but I heard it was.
It was on, I think it's tabled.
I think it was tabled,
Yeah,
yeah.
or postponed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So they're really good at doing some baseline analysis. They've got tremendous amount of depth as far as references to best practices. It's really a great group of people too. So we threw a bunch of things at them, all the way from assured housing, affordable housing, how you measure it, how you do the OAO calculation, what that ratio looks like.
Okay.
But probably the scope, they kept saying scope 3 or 4 times and I fell off. We'll see if the scopes get. So they're going to draft some bullet points for the discussion and bring it back to us and then eventually end up with a plan.
We had a draft economic report circulated maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and OB, you might recall. Do you have reference to that? And if so, do you know, was that BAE as well, or was that done internally?
It's probably referenced in the general plan, actually. There's a lot of economic data that came out, usually
Yeah.
I think in 2018.
I don't think it was ever adopted or even finalized, though.
Well, the last BAE that was the baseline analysis of the housing.
Mhm.
So it's updating that.
Okay.
And that was the one that was used for HDHO.
Then that would have been the same, because that was very troubling when it came out. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So we also talked a little bit, because in California, which is where they're basically from, they're used to having the general plan legally connected to the land use code. And we mentioned a bit of the challenges there that if we're going to be doing some long range planning or baseline planning with the land use code, we should be reflecting that in the general plan. Anyway, that was part of the scope question. So anyway, you'll hear more about that as we move ahead. And that was one of the discussions that was brought up with the county commission on hierarchy of analysis.
Great.
ADU and temp use sections to be adopted in late May. So that might be a bit ambitious. Some of these dates might be a bit ambitious. Yeah. So,
Right.
and long-term camping will be next, which I know the county, you guys, planning commission's weighed in a number of times on different options. So we haven't forgotten you.
I'm glad to see you try it.
To that part, Jenna.
Okay,
Okay, and April 12th is the land use code and land use analysis steering committee meeting, which is tomorrow. So,
Am I supposed to be at that
no,
meeting?
no,
I was like,
I'm looking at you, but
I was like, I'm supposed to be in Vernal. I don't know how, okay.
No, so Mary's on it. I mean, because the chair's changed a couple of times, so I don't think Jacques is on it. Mary's on it, Kevin's on it, Steve is on it now, I think. He's going to attend anyway, at least he was planning on it.
yeah, I don't know.
Steve and Josie were both on it, weren't they?
They were, and
Josie's obviously
OB's not able to attend tomorrow, and with Steve, I don't know the details of why he wasn't able to attend this evening, so we'll touch base with him.
Yeah, okay, we'll see how that goes, but you're going to be there.
I will be there, yes.
And we're going to have a little thumbnail land use. I have not seen it yet, so the consultant's putting that together for tomorrow.
Good.
To give you a flavor of the workshop.
Flavor of planning. Can't wait.
We have drafted a table of contents for the brand new land use code,
Wonderful.
which is called the Unified Development Code, which might be a little overly ambitious, but it's taking all development codes and putting them into one code. Building, fire,
Good.
signs, noise, anything to do with development would be unified. And you'd have 4 or 5 administrators, a zoning administrator, building official, roads would go in there too.
Good.
So road
Wow.
design would be there.
Nice.
The roads director would be an administrator or engineer, whatever you want to call. Missing one. Well, code enforcement might be too, but that's probably zoning. So
That's great. I'm very glad to hear that, actually.
yeah, I thought we'd get some pushback from some people, but not so far. But let's see. And then the joint planning commission workshop with the county commission is on April the 25th, and that's taking the thumbnail analysis and starting to take a look at some real land use analysis and land use descriptions and what those look like going forward. He's got a fair bit of feedback from our open houses, so he's going to be crunching that data. He's
That's
probably done it all
cool.
by now. And then April 27th to 28th, I believe, are planning open houses. The 27th is at WISA from 4 to 6, and the other one is groundwater and sewer. And the other one is 28th at the Grand Center, and it's an open invitation to all neighborhood people to participate, so that Times Independent might be interested in this. It'd be open. The idea is we want to hear from people, no matter what you've got to say. We want people to vent, talk, tell us what's going on in your neighborhood, and there'll be some land use presentations there too. Our consultant will be in town for both of those.
And all of this information is available on grandcountyconnects.com, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Good to know it.
Good ad there.
Oh, so great.
It's
And I
like
one I
product placement.
Yeah. Brought to you
Have a
by.
little, like,
you have a testimonial.
Put a sticker on the back of my computer.
So on April 20th, which is not on this list, is if people care about this too, I think that TI would, is the boat ramp. There's no boat ramp open house, the town boat ramp.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is- Which is on the Colorado River. People call it the town boat ramp, which is actually in the county, but it's April 20th at Grand Center. I could send you. We just did the flyer today.
Great.
In fact, you should be on our email list. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, unless Jenna has anything else.
So what you're saying is April's going to be nice and calm for your office.
That's right.
Not a lot going on. Thank you so much for everything you all do.
Yeah.
Any questions for John or staff related to the staff update?
Ben?
Clarifying question about housing C.
Yeah.
When it says like long-term camping will be next, is that after May,
It'll be during May.
during?
Yeah, so staff will be working on that during the May, but it's probably going to be just in parallel, but it's not going to be too aggressive. We've already got a lot of background material on that already, so we can talk about that in turn.
And we have a comment in the chat from a member of our economic development staff saying that the meeting time of the boat ramp meeting is being pushed. So it sounds like that. Ben, do you know what the new time is?
It's 4 to 6.
4 to 6 is now the new time. Great. Okay. Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, if there are no further comments from staff or questions to staff, we will go ahead and move on. Yes? To main event, public hearing to consider and solicit input on the general plan update 2030. Okay, so
Well, you know what, Bob, if you could just scroll down, because you got control of you're the conductor here.
yeah,
If you could just scroll through the neighborhood planning, this is minutes. So if you could go to the neighborhood, sorry.
no, please, this is great.
If you could go to the neighborhood planning section, if you just keep scrolling through the minutes. That way everybody can see it.
It's not
And these are
there.
preliminary, yes?
Yeah, so there's the list of projects that were in front of the county commission for the land use code.
Yep.
I don't think we have to spend too much time on that, but that's got kind of the priority. I think we got fairly good marching orders from the county commission. Hey, Trish,
That's great.
it was discussed quite a bit.
Yeah.
And there was a good recommendation resolution that came out of the commission that was crafted by Kevin, so I thought that was pretty well.
Yeah.
So we could keep going there, Bob.
Okay.
You're doing great. Where are you in Eugene?
No, I'm in San Clemente, which was the Western White House when Nixon was president.
All
But
right.
I'm only in San Clemente, not in the White House.
Oh, yeah.
Good clarification.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
you're-
even further.
Slow it up, no, a little too fast, just go back a little way, sorry.
I get to go back to this.
Yeah, just I want to go through these dates here just a little bit so that we've got them in front of us. So April 11th is the public hearing, so that's unfolding like it should. Tomorrow is the land use code, and that should say general plan review at the same time. Then the 19th is the public hearing for the county commission on the general plan. We've actually, I think we might be moving that, to tell you the truth. And then April 25th is the workshop, and then April 19th to the 26th would be the proposed, because we leave the public hearings open with the county commission for a week. And then 27th to 28th are the neighborhood planning ones. And then May 9th is the beginning of neighborhood planning phase 2, which is actually going out and meeting with the neighborhoods. And then what follows here are some discrete map locations where we think neighborhoods could be. Worked with Josh Green, who really knows the neighborhoods well. And this is a work in progress, but any comments the commission has about those areas, I think there's 8 of them altogether. And I arbitrarily named them all, which I can't remember right now, but they're all kind of named around Spanish Valley primarily. North Spanish Valley, Northeast Spanish Valley, South Spanish Valley, that kind of thing. And then Thompson and Cisco is part of that. Some people are saying Green River probably could have a little segment too. It depends how big of neighborhood you want to talk about. I mean, these are pretty small areas, really.
This is not at all a request that I'm asking you to prioritize, but it would be interesting when things slow down to go back to our Spanish Valley survey that we got so many responses to, and where people self-reported their neighborhoods, try our best to slice across it
Oh, that's
by
good.
these areas, because I would be curious, based off of where people lived in the county, how they would respond to priorities and so on.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a rural area, so it's harder to be more kind of node oriented. So, yeah, if you keep going there, Bob, I think there was this bit of a staff report that had to do with the naming of the
Then
areas.
Makeda has a comment.
Maybe not.
Did we collect, was there, I can't remember on the survey, was there a collection of like any contact information, or was it totally anonymous?
No, there was no demographics at all.
So the only, I'm not going to call it a concern, but question as far as those maps go is there are specifically places where there can be a pretty big difference in character within a half mile or so. I'm thinking about the turnoff to Spanish Trail, where the Shell station is very different in character than a mile down Spanish Valley Drive, or Spanish Valley Drive near the Rim Village development is a very different character than, further down towards like Kirby Lane. So I do think it's worth pinpointing the nodes within these. I mean, it's more probably how we use this than how we define them where that comes into play, but I don't want to lose that, because traffic patterns, especially in those neighborhoods and those arterial roads, can have pretty big impact.
Yeah,
on
so
the
we
character.
thought internally this would get a lot of discussion as we move forward, and there'll be a lot of
Okay.
adjustments to make.
Okay,
We thought we'd put it out there just for comment.
great. Will this be up on grandcountyconnects.com for comment?
Not right away. I actually want to vet it more internally with
Okay.
Bill Jackson, who's long-term rep, and Bill Hulse, because they really know the community. So,
Yeah.
like,
Y'all laugh, but
yeah,
more opportunity for people to comment,
No, it's great.
the better off we are. But yes, okay, that's good to know.
okay, if you could just go to, Bob, do you have something?
Only that what I find very, very valuable, of course, are those surveys where you get a lot of people. Will you do surveys at the individual? Because I understand that you'll have individual neighborhood meetings. And I'm wondering if you'll do even a survey there when you get maybe 30 people might be helpful.
Yeah,
Just a
so
comment.
this framework, Bob, might help a little bit. This gives kind of a time frame of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 kind of thing. So the first idea is to go out and listen, present some things, but not really get into a dialogue. It's more of a listening phase. That's that number 1 underlined there. And then the next phase, this doesn't always work this way in my experience, because sometimes people that worked at the first one are at the second one, and they still want to say a lot. So the clarification one is the next phase, even though it may not be the next meeting. That's clarifying what we thought we heard. And then the third one is coming back with some strategies. The first 2 are really planning. It's us leading it. Maybe economic development too, maybe Ben. And then not say leading, facilitating is a better word. And then the third phase is actually, so clarification is bringing department heads back and having strategies. So police or fire, sheriff, fire, building. You get a lot of complaints about roads, usually in my experience. You get complaints about noise and code enforcement. So that's when you start coming back, well, here's what we're thinking of doing. Here's what we have in the works. Here's what we'd like you to have a dialogue with. That's where the rubber hits the road, where you start talking about strategies. And it's everybody involved. And county commissioners tend to love this stuff because it's very grassroots, public oriented. And then the fourth one is actually moving to the phase. And if you want to scroll down, Bob, there's this is all draft, that we would be showing a lot of this to the public. But it's, if you just keep scrolling, these are kind of the elements that we'd be discussing. We don't present this, by the way. This is, we just hold this in our back pocket, and just, this is normally the way things come out in categories. Not that everything has to be categorized, but all of those elements are usually where things are at. I might be missing some things here too. And then, so we start drafting little mini general plans. If you like the general plan now, you just love it when we start doing little ones. So little small area plans. And then if you want to scroll down a bit more, there's the action plan starts to talk about categories, strategies, who's responsible, and what the timing is. So this is really making things happen. That we're listening, we're engaging, and this would go to the county commission and the planning commission when the strategy part came up. Yeah, and then after that's all, this goes back into the general plan because it's part of the neighborhood plan. This is the grassroots part of the general plan. This is the fun part. The rest of it's not been that much fun, is it?
Says you. I'm glad to see all the outreach. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
And then, so then there's a bunch of categories on actions and how we measure success. This gets into the indicators and reporting on a regular basis. Families and youth are listed there too.
If members of the public wanted to get involved around some of these focus areas, people who work in different industries, who have recreational preferences or strong uses, how can people get involved at that level? Or
Yeah, so that's we're hoping that this public engagement strategy will unfold as this moves forward, and we'll tap it in. I've already got a draft done. It pushes a lot of buttons for administration though, so we got to be careful we don't burn people out.
So you had stakeholder groups for the general plan. Are you and I know you actively reached out to the community. Are those the people you're going to go back to, or if folks want to get involved on this next round for their neighborhoods, should they contact you or just wait? How does that?
Yeah, it's something we'll tap into as we start unfolding this, and the county commission will, and you'll have a lot to say about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've taken a couple of models out there. Sonona's got a really deep public engagement model, which actually has a whole group, neighborhood groups working together a lot more structurally and formally. I don't know if we want that, but that could be proposed.
Great.
So we need a good buy-in internally about this and what it means in order for it to be effective.
What does that mean? You need good buy-in internally?
Well, people have to, it needs to go to the county commission and say, yeah, we got a public engagement strategy. This is what we want to do. It's like the strategic plan. And they adopted, the county commission adopted that formally in the last meeting. If you don't have it coming from the top, then, and I'm not saying that people are lax about it. It's just that it doesn't mean much. When it comes from the top, it usually means we need to do something about this. So there's lots of things that strategic plan that tie into this too.
That's great.
So this is the grassroots part of the general plan development. And this is going to take us 1.5 years or 2 years.
Okay.
And it's taken us a year already. In case I said December when I first started. And now where are we?
I think the fact that it's only April speaks volumes to you and your staff, John, so. Great.
Well, we were hoping to get more done sooner. But.
No.
So there's the categories. Thanks, Bob. And you see youth there, seniors there, healthcare is a big one, housing is a big one too, recreational mobility. There's housing, transportation, regional transportation, workforce, adult learning. This might be a little outside what people would think would be in a general plan. Food security, Lauren will be an expert at that. So there's a lot of elements, and I try to capture as many as I could. So there could be others.
Great.
And there's a primary goals section. So you can scroll through most of that. It's good bedtime reading. He's running up things, Rick.
I scrolled through just maybe a little faster than that.
Okay, there's the flyer. It's been updated a bit, I think. Neighborhood planning ones. There's the Quissa one, Spanish Trail Road. Everybody knows what the Quissa offices are, I think. And then the one on Grand Center 2. So the goal is to actually start off with general meetings to begin with and just do a listening thing and talk about our next steps. And then the next one is, this is the general plan. So there's the neighborhood planning kind of update. Strategy.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, any additional questions for John?
This is an internal question or a commission question, but as far as getting a feedback from the general public, like this map where you have the different neighborhoods defined, I would be interested in like putting the map out and having people draw that line and like comparing those.
And we'll bring them to the meetings probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And we'll start building our database. We don't really have a strong, at least I don't know one personally, we just know, everyone knows of a strong neighborhood database. Rissa would have, a lot.
Probably,
They actually have a whole database, which they're willing to share. with
They or
us.
the sheriff's office may have
And the
good data
sheriff's
as well.
office, yeah. So it's tapping into those
Or
resources.
search.
Yeah.
Yeah, and building off of that. So that'll take some time. I do have a database of what I call a client engagement group, which has got about 100 people in it. I think, remember what Dana said she had on her database? She was talking to us last time. She had quite a few. So yeah, it's tapping into those resources. So if you know of it, that's one of those things. Sure.
Okay. Niketa just left the room. She'll be back in half a second, so we can't open our hearing till she's back because of quorum. So we'll take just 30 seconds if anyone needs to grab water before we go into this and come back in just a second. Unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about in the meantime. Okay.
Yeah, just wanted, so I'm just going to just logistically, I've been used to when I've been in different places to find quorum, to make sure we have quorum. I'm not sure how you've been doing it here because we've never had a problem.
We haven't had a problem until now. And actually, I was saying prior to going remote, we did suffer from the occasional lack of quorum. But this is the first time we've been up against the edge. I think it's just a spring break week combined with Jeep Safari combined with just things happen. And then
As a county commissioner.
and then the gap on the county commission is Josie.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And not since I've been there.
I would assume Mallory probably, so it used to be our department that would chase these things down, just to make sure there's quorum. It's not on you, it's on us to make sure the quorum's there. So,
Yeah, we haven't had problems, but this is a tough week. Just so you know, yeah, all the schools go on vacation because
Oh,
people
that's
don't
right.
want to be here,
Yeah.
right? So
We
they leave,
may
right?
want to consider
Right.
our meetings that at the end of the year, we look at our meetings
Yes.
for the week, for the year. So like, we don't do meetings the week of between Christmas holidays or Thanksgiving. This is a week we might just want
Yeah.
to not have
'cause
meetings.
it's always the same week.
Yeah.
It's the week
Week
before
before
Easter,
Easter.
it's spring break week, and it's just,
Most, yeah,
so
if you can leave, people leave.
park that under future considerations,
Yeah.
but probably not.
That
even.
apply to the county commission too, do you think?
I would assume so, yeah.
But
yeah,
now that
I
we can
don't
all
think-
zoom in, I mean, OB was able to join
Yeah.
us. It's a little different. In this case, we lost a planning commissioner to the county
Mhm.
commission. And one of our commissioners had something come up, and then I don't know where, so,
Yeah.
Where Tony's at.
yeah, so things happen. Let's keep an eye on it. I think generally the fact that we have visibility into the shared calendar now, so people can see that the meetings are coming, nobody forgets. Elisa has been so great about sending out an
Yeah.
email with the packet.
Yeah.
If it's something we're concerned about going into the summer, we might just want to ask people to email ahead of time, just like you would if you're going to miss work.
Right.
But we can talk about that offline,
Yeah.
'cause, yeah, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Okay, all right. Any other comments? All right, so now we will move on to our public hearing officially. And here's how we are going to go through this. I'm looking at my digital copy of the packet, so I don't actually know what page this is, but 10% down the packet or so, before the text of the general plan, there's a table that staff has put together. I think it's just below that. Oh, there we go. So
It'd be really hard to read.
it will be hard to read, but it's okay. This is available online. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, this is on the Agenda Center for Grand County. Just search Grand County Agenda Center. You can pull this up and scan through it. So over the course of review, staff has received ongoing comment from the county commission, the planning commission, various boards, stakeholder groups, members of the public. We've had several open houses, we've had public forums, and I think staff has done a phenomenal job of being transparent with those comments that they've come in, regularly processing them and providing summaries as far as what is evolving.
If I could just throw in there, this
Yes.
was a Google Docs, live docs too in December, the first phase. So we got a lot of comments. That's where most of the comments
Yes.
come from. And then we had a second phase, which is another document here too, which I didn't expect any to get, but Bob O'Brien went through the whole thing. And McKenna, did you do some of it?
I think I did a little bit, but I don't remember.
Yeah, there's some comments from you, and then I know Emily, you were going through things. I don't think I did. Sarah went through it again too. So those are included in the second phase of this. So that's where most of it came from. We didn't really get anything substantially submitted in writing from the public.
Okay.
So, and I mean, you guys are public, I guess, in some ways, representation, but and I think a good cross-section was there. So at least I felt that the engagement was, this is a top-down approach. So
Yeah.
the grassroots part's not here in most cases. That will come.
Yes, and I do appreciate how well staff has revisited this regularly at our meetings, at our workshops, and I know like when we had our land use open house, there was great participation. So we've had a whole mix of input. What staff has done is taken each of the major sections and provide a summary of how it has evolved, and what I want to do this evening, so we don't get completely overwhelmed, is to go through this table at a high level, section by section. After we've gone through each row, we'll also break for any additional comments if anyone has read through or has any additional thoughts to add. Then at the end of that, if staff has any additional questions, we'll raise them, after which we'll call for a vote. I don't think we need to, I actually think that we should be able to get through this efficiently this afternoon. Any other thoughts from your end?
Well, I would just, if we could, Bob, are you able to zoom in?
Maybe can you close the comment panel on the right where it says 13 comments? There we go.
And then the little plus button at the top.
So maybe one more. There we go. Fabulous. Thank you, Obi.
You're doing a great job out of San Clemente.
Now, we also have someone, Kaylin Jones just joined us. We haven't, actually, here's what I'm going to do. It is 5:19. I am going to formally open this public hearing and I will leave it open throughout this conversation. If you are a member of the public and you're here to make a comment, I'll call for comments now. If a comment comes up and you would like to speak after that time, I'm going to ask that you put a comment into the Zoom chat. Or if for whatever reason that's unavailable to you, come off of mute and say, I'd like to make a comment, and then we'll come back. And there's not a lot of people here, but if we end up having a number of people who want to make comments, we'll break. We'll ask for comments again after we go through this review and then move forward. So that's kind of how we're going to handle this. Kaylin, are you here to make a comment for the public hearing or just to listen in?
I am here just to listen in for now, although I may have a comment later.
Fantastic. All right. And seeing no one else, we will go ahead and start to go through this document. So John, I think I'm going to leave it to you to give us a high-level summary.
Okay, and I'm not going to go through every one of these in red.
Okay.
They are color-coded a bit. You might find, if you go through this detailed, you might find the red and the black a little bit confusing sometimes. But most of the red has been considered and thought of, and you'll see the comments and the recommendations changed or updated, which means that the document that was presented, there's been some red lines that were put in, but when it was turned into PDF, the red lines disappeared. So the document you're looking at right now is the updated document with no other changes added. As I mentioned before, Bob O'Brien went through it from beginning to end, came right to the very end, I think, because I saw the last one or two comments. Sarah Walker did a pretty good job of going through it too. And then earlier on, almost all of you commented. So, and those are all kind of referenced, and a lot of the changes that were in the second version were included already. So a lot of the version changes, the tracking changes don't always show up. So I know that gets a bit confusing. But the document you're looking at tonight is the final proposed document. So section 6 is the land use section, which is a very troubling section for us. First of all, we're not changing anything. It's the 2012 plan is staying exactly as it is. I've added some guidance language in section 6 that has to do with, and there's been questions about that have to do with the different land use descriptions that you would normally see them, but they are not adopted. They're just considered. This whole section is going to be completely updated and referenced with the land use section coming forward, which is part of the workshop, and hopefully will be formally adopted by the Planning Commission and the County Commission in June. That's the deadline. Obviously, the consultant's work has to end someplace, and that's what we're hoping to do, is come forward with a recommendation. They're doing scenario planning, so they're taking a look at low, medium, and high scenarios. Intuitively, within the county, most people would agree that we're looking at more of a low category, but it's looking for where density can go, where different uses can go. Mixed use can go, for example, with mixed use commercial and residential, and where good serviced industrial and commercial land can be. Those are not easy questions to answer or direction to take. So, and what that pace of growth looks like over time, starting with now and where it could go. It's hard to redo development that's already happened. I think we have a lot of kind of larger lot development. We're using up a lot of private land in areas, and I think the comment that was made about we have to be careful about where we put density that Kevin mentioned. We don't want to give density away, but we also don't want to sprawl. So we have to be careful about where good service development land is. And also within that whole evaluation, which is a level of service analysis, is taking a look at where you shouldn't develop. So steep slopes, view corridors, ridgeline protection, scenic corridors, hazardous lands, floodplain, habitat protection. And when you consider all of that thrown in there with public lands, there's not a lot of land left. So So that's the consultant's marching orders, is to actually put those things together. If you look at the recommendations on the other side, so at the side, I kind of went through the references. I did include initials for each one of these, but they could have actually neutered that part maybe and took them out. But anyway, those are comments that came in from specific people, and I thought we would not bad recognizing some of that too. So, and they're just initials, so you'd have to guess at who they are. So the recommendation in most of this section is to, I've made some changes. I've referenced back, references to the maps that are there too, that's already there. In some cases, I've made changes, especially where they were grammatical or they were technical and they could be updated. But in a lot of cases, I've referenced in the black sections, I've referenced future changes that'll be coming.
So John, knowing that this section is going to update, I did have one suggestion for an additional goal in this section. Is now the right time to raise that, or is it later in the summer?
You can do that.
'Cause-
You can do that now, but I tried to include, in fact, I made some goal changes here, I thought.
Okay. Obi, would you mind scrolling over? Sorry to ask you to drive throughout this. So I had a comment here under issues that you've marked black to return to as part of the land use code scenario planning, specific to the fact that we are seeing an increase in people who visit and live here in non-traditional housing. And I don't mean that in the sense of tiny homes or even, possibly campgrounds. Van lifers is the code that we keep using. And there is an ongoing community question about how many of these van lifers represent locals who do not have a place to park their van, to reside, to have a home, whether traditional or non-traditional, and how many are visitors. So with that context, on page 39 of the land use of the general plan under land use, so we've got goals such as encourage mixed residential and business development, redevelopment projects, etc. I do wonder at that top level if it's worth setting a community goal to explicitly address non-traditional housing uses while also offsetting the community impact of non-traditional visitation uses or something to that end. People who don't camp and don't stay in traditional hotels, I am hearing from the public that people are starting to get very irritated and at times concerned about the proliferation of that use in our county. We kind of capture it through various areas such as our definition of campgrounds and or camping, but I do think it's worth calling out. So I'm not trying to just say words, but somehow I would love to capture the community interest that we are seeing residential uses, visitation uses change dramatically. We can't even anticipate what they're going to be like 5 years from now. How do we ensure that we prioritize maintaining our residents' quality of life first and foremost?
See, I would, if I was, just as a recommendation, I would park that for now.
Okay.
And we would come back to it.
That's good.
Because that whole land use section, and it's not that I would call it tinkering, but I think we would want to consider that holistically.
All good. That's I just wasn't sure how deep we wanted to go now or not. Okay. So
I mean, that's one of the reasons we from a planning perspective, thought land use is job one, and we need to get that right. And that's why we went with rather than, so we draft the general plan, we do it internally, we work together with the public, we do the public engagement, we work with the commissions, but we hire a consultant to get that part done while we're doing the rest of that. And I know sometimes that doesn't make a lot of sense because you have to go back and redraft it, the whole section. But I think in the long run, if you do this from the top down and do it well, those marching or those, I keep saying those words, but the next steps actually make sense.
okay. So just out of curiosity, and then I'll return us back to normal business. Our motion this evening, because we don't have a draft motion, will be,
There is a draft motion.
I don't think so. I didn't see a header page on top of it.
There should be a draft motion in the staff report. Just,
I didn't see one.
you didn't see one?
I didn't know what
I moved to advance the general plan.
To advance, that was my question. So our motion this evening will be to advance it to the county commission.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make
That
sure I
should be
knew
in
what
the
verb
staff
we were
report.
using.
Just go up a little further, Bob, if you can.
Yeah, that's what
You're doing a
I
great
knew.
job.
I knew it was, I think it's up there at the top of this.
Yeah, it should be there.
Uh,
So staff recommendation, the general plan be considered for adoption or for county commission.
That the general plan.
Oh.
it's going to be adopted and then it's going to be recommended, or excuse me, revised later in the, okay, cool, great, thank you. All right, back to normal programming.
So but just, if you could stop, sorry, you're going to, could go back up, go back. Is your machine taking over or what?
It's just going back and forth. I haven't touched anything.
Okay, so right there. If you could stop there. Yeah. So November, there's the background. Emily, you kind of summarized this. So November 10th, we had the public open house. This is always good to go through. December 2nd, the steering committee review and guidance. December 13th, posting a first draft. That's where we got most of the comments. January 10th, the joint PC and county commission workshop. January 10th, 25th was kind of the penultimate draft review and feedback, and that was vetted through a number of agencies and groups. February 25th to March 14th, the final draft was posted, and then March 14th, the PC reference notice and setting the public hearing for today.
Okay.
Now, the next steps, if we could just scroll down a bit more. It's important to recognize the comments received from the elected officials and appointed officials. So land use, the delivery is June 22nd, June of 2022, I should say. Transportation is actually August. They've delayed it a little bit more. And that's the joint plan with the city. And then the public engagement master plan is July. Economic master plan is not underway yet, but I think their goal is to move that forward. So that's another one that's in progress. And the affordable housing master plan, which is in progress with the affordable housing group, which is being done internally too, is underway. Impact fee study and the capital planning one is supposed to be underway. That's Chris Baird looking after that. So we have a lot of plans going on. You can only do so many at one time.
I think that's what I'm getting confused by, and I apologize for revisiting this, but again, if I have the questions, others do as well. So assuming that this goes forward this evening and assuming that this passes at the county commission level, then in June, when we are revisiting land use code updates, we will be passing a June 2022 revision to the May 2022 general plan. So what we are putting forward is we are recommending this as the general plan, knowing that the general plan will change. So why wouldn't we want language that represents community interests to be included in that draft?
Well, because we're talking mainly section 6, which is land use. So it's mainly the silo of section 6. It's not the whole plan.
Okay.
But a general plan technically is comprehensive. It's meant all the pieces talk together. They're not in silos. So you've got a point. That is that it's not just section 6 is changing, but primarily it is. The transportation one's the same way. If you think about transportation, it cuts across almost everything. So does land use. So all of those sections need to be updated. So it's not just section 6. It does address a number of other policy areas that you touched on, Emily. So, but each one of those sections, in my experience, they start to make sense as you start developing it. And that's where the whole thing starts to become technically really comprehensive, because it's not comprehensive now.
So I will bring my comment to the land use code meeting tomorrow.
And then the other thing is, which it didn't jump out here. Well, it actually is right there. An implementation workshop with both the planning commission and county commission is planned for May 20. So if this goes forward for adoption, the next step is to actually get together as a group, too many workshops, and start talking about what is the priority coming out of this, because there's a lot of them.
Okay.
I know you have something to say.
Well, it doesn't matter. I don't want to revisit. I'm trying to figure out why adjustments this evening would not be.
Oh, no, that's
relevant at
okay.
this time.
It's okay.
Okay.
Oh,
no, it's
If
okay.
it's burning.
I think it's an important, and I think it's in the record deep enough that we can revisit it at a later time. So, okay. Anyone else have any comments?
That your changes to the land use code section, you recognize not necessarily an element in the general code, but the changes you're looking to see for fan lifers, perhaps might be an element of that long use camp park, maybe a subset of that change.
And it could be that it's redundant to exactly what you're saying. What I'm trying to get at is I want to make sure that our general plan that we move forward represents the policy vision and the outcomes that we have heard from the public and want to see reflected in it.
So why are you thinking investigate making the land use code change to address that? You also just like a word or sentence or so to address the concept in the general.
largely because the land use code updates we're making right now are relevant to what we're seeing today. 3 or 4 years from now, we may see things evolve. We may have a different county commission, we may have a different state legislature and so on. I want to make sure that the general plan is adopted, reflects the interest of the community so we can go back to it as a guide and not just a point in time. And
Support these other,
right.
you know, choice in like type of things, but without using the term family. because that
Yes.
might change it all over time.
I think that the term itself. The interesting thing about being on the planning commission for several years is you do see people come in and reference the general plan when speaking for or against certain small area plans, certain development policies. It is a tool that the community turns to. And I want to make sure then that the language of the general plan reflects the community's interest. I don't want to leave something out. I also don't want to spin on this if we're going to come back and
We
revisit
are
it.
going
So
to, and
it
that's-
doesn't,
It's pretty
yeah.
quick when you think about it, Emily. Within
Yeah.
2 months here, 3 months, 3 months, we'll be.
So just little asterisks that Emily had a comment we can revisit at the land use code meeting and we're good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, there's a lot of meat in here. There's lots of maps. There's over 30 pages of maps. And I tried to integrate those as best I could. Nobody commented on that, but there's gaps there too.
Yeah.
There's watershed. I've shown watershed. I've shown noxious weeds. I've shown steep slopes. I've shown ridgeline protection. There's 10 times more maps in this than there is in the 2012 plan. And there's 7 more elements. I mean, land use is in the original other plan, but decision-making, the police fire thing is not, none of, these are all new.
It's exceptionally comprehensive. Thrilling, one might say.
Thrillingly comprehensive.
Thrillingly comprehensive. Okay, I've said my piece. I feel like my comment is heard. We can move on. Does anyone else have any other comments? Or John, did you want to add anything else on that
Well, just
section in the
staff,
table?
we could, that's the land use section. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this. That's probably the one that had the most comments in it and needs the most work, I think. Transportation one will get a lot more. Yeah, thanks, Bob. So the transportation one will get a lot. So that's section 6. If you could just scroll down a bit more to the next section. Whoops.
All of my comments are marked for later.
That's really funny. Didn't notice that.
Nice thought, Emily.
Okay, section 11. You want to just, oh. So there's section 6.
Okay, so that's-
Somehow your little comment thing came back. There you go. So if you could scroll down, I think most people can read that.
So everything in red has been adopted. Everything in black are things we'll return
Yeah,
to.
everything in red has been considered and maybe modified a bit, but at least included.
Thank you.
So I tried to, I was going to put another color in there for things that have been partially considered, but I thought it was going to get too complicated. So if you could just keep scrolling down, that's section 6, which is a big part of it.
Mhm.
And there were how many comments? I tried to group these together, and some of that was somewhat arbitrary too. Some things are land use and they're transportation too. So section 11, and this one's the resource management area too. That one I had some comments too, and there were some comments that were included. So I've made some changes to that. But that's a smaller section. Section 1 and 7, I think that's decision making. The importance of alternative methods of transportation and transportation. Yeah. So there again, we're universal access was referenced. Somebody said, well, we should be talking more about, mobility challenges, which is a good reference too. So ADA requirements, those kinds of things. Section 4 and 10, I think that's the environmental section too. So there's a fair number of comments in here too.
Mhm.
About that. Emily, you had a lot of comments here, and you're the EC on there. You probably know that already. So I haven't ignored you completely. But a lot of that, I mean, there were great comments. I just left till later. Sorry to say.
No, that's fine. This is so sections 4 and 10 on the left hand of the table, it says decisions. OB, if you slide over just to show the leftmost column, sorry, other direction.
No, left. The other left.
There we go.
Yeah.
So we have
Demographics.
above that was decisions, then demographics.
Yeah, I know, Bob, I know you had a lot of comments too, so you can pipe up anytime.
Only the one, you get to see what I highlighted. So
Nice.
there is this comment by me, and I believe that if you actually look at the graph, there's some language that says something like the youngest two age groups have negative growth. And then there's this comment about that. We got to maybe worry about schools. And I believe that particular graph only shows the youngest age group having negative growth. And that's still in there. And I may just be reading the graph wrong. So it just happens to be why I highlighted this, but you might check looking at that graph. It's in the section, you have lots of graphs. And I think there's only one age group that has negative growth, and it's the youngest. So, I would probably say, well, I think it should be changed unless I'm reading the graph wrong.
Well, maybe I misunderstood because I know you made this comment 2 or 3 times.
Yes, I did it for the later graph.
I wasn't ignoring you. It's just the comment I had is suggest childbearing. What does 6 say? Suggest childbearing age for children, and going forward that it would mean negative population growth in schools.
Right.
Over time.
If you just kind of look at that, the wording on the thing below, it sounds like you're saying the 2 youngest age groups have that. Because the last time I think I commented on it, I said something like, doesn't this downward sloping one mean negative growth? And you said yes, but I think I was trying to make a different comment. But check it out, scrolling through, or maybe we'll scroll through the plan itself eventually. Otherwise, I have no more comments.
Okay. And then next, sustainability is a big section too. We're suggesting, and I hate to throw a master plan at everything, but an integrated community sustainability plan is one of the implementation strategies, and that's taking a look at sustainability across the board, and then getting a good kind of way of reporting on data that's there. A good baseline analysis. Mila, when she was still, I don't know if she's still in the city or not, but when she was there, she actually went through this section quite well. That's the MDI there. So I've made a couple of changes and tweaks in a number of areas too. And the baseline information for sustainability as far as carbon emissions and all of that type of thing needs attention in the general plan. So that's another section that needs redrafting. But it's actually mentioned that, update the data, reflect climate change adaptation, mitigation kinds of measures, and how that looks like going forward. Sustainability, we could spend 6 months on that by itself, just internally with our staff. There's how many resources it takes. So I think some of this you identify as best you can and just say, we'll move ahead with it and work with it as we move ahead. And we'll get grants, hopefully, as we start doing this kind of thing. So there's a lot of elements there in sustainability. Parks is another one, and you could probably group a number of different things in parks. We don't have a parks department. One of the suggestions is that we do a Parks and Rec master plan and combine it with the city efforts, work with potentially with Annie and city decision makers as well, and think about trails and integration, because trails don't stop at boundaries. They go across boundaries. So think about those and integrating and what those services are. Take a look at active parks, passive parks, and different facilities are provided and how we organize ourselves together. I don't know if that makes sense from an elected position, elected people's position or planning commission, but I think the Parks and Rec one is usually one of those ones you can work together well on. Anyway, that's suggested in the plan too. The economic development one, as I mentioned, that one's kind of out there with August and Ben. The big section there too to deal with a lot of analysis that we have as far as economic diversity too. So there's some tremendous challenges there moving ahead. We've got a lot of good economic data, I think, in the general plan, and it's pretty current. So that helps a lot. And then dealing with the indicators and how they're managed and reporting on a regular basis. The implementation section, Bob's commented on a couple of things there too, so I tried to include that and update those as best I could. And then attachment number 5 was the last comments, which I didn't expect we'd get more, but I was cramming this on Friday trying to get all of these done. So the comment, response, recommendations are all there. I didn't color code these. I don't believe I did. So I don't think there's any bolding there. Let's see. And there's the population one. That's Bob's comments. I know he's made that a couple of times. Sorry, Bob. And then personalized aircraft I left will be updated with the adoption of the transportation master plan. That's actually under discussion right now. It's one of the projects. So that's cars that will fly. So that's pretty well it.
I can't remember, Evan Clapper and I worked on that transportation section, and the explicit example he gave was the little flying lawnmower things that you see in the air. You know what I'm talking about?
Drones, me?
Not the drones. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's like the flying, yeah, the parasail. So it was.
Lawnmower.
It sounds like a lawnmower when they go over my house.
exactly.
So it wasn't so much flying cars as like
big fans on the back.
the flying vehicles that are currently over our neighborhood. So it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
as far-fetched as one might
Oh,
imagine.
no, this is
Yeah.
coming. Some of this is coming.
I'm very aware. I hear him all the time. Yep.
Well, those are all gas fired. I think they're not electric.
Yeah, they're gas.
They're so loud.
So
There's
far
no
they're
way.
gas, yeah. But the point is future technologies are already here. And so-
Yeah, no, they are, for sure. Yeah, and actually, there's a couple of countries in the world, I think Italy's actually had autonomous vehicles flying back and forth from the airport.
Flying?
Yeah.
Oh.
They've actually provided for it within their air traffic control area.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah, so shuttling back and forth to the airport from a hotel or something. Off ground, no, off ground, this is in the air. Autonomous, yeah.
Jetsons.
I'm definitely Googling that one.
Future is going to be great.
Anyway, that comment was made. So this is just the table of contents.
Okay, I'm going to pause here really quick. We went through a lot there. Again, we only have a couple people on. I would like to open for comments just to see if anybody does want to chime in. Otherwise, we'll move on.
No,
Great.
No, that was quick.
Good. Thank you. All right.
I have nothing. We're working on it. Thanks, John.
You're welcome, Ben. Ben's got some homework.
Seems like it. Lots to do.
You know, actually, the person from Town Folio, who we want to go with for indicators, actually stood me up today for no less than the third time for
Oh,
a
wow.
phone call. So, but it's other than that, pressing along.
Oh, that's too bad. Town Folio is proprietary community indicator site. Yeah, I think we've shown you some of the data. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. I know it's a big document to go through, Rick.
Rick memorized it.
You've not. This is one photographic
So,
memory.
Not to belabor the conversation. There are some suggestions in that table we're coming back to with the explanation that further planning will be done to address it. But I also feel like in those comments, there are assertions that underlie why it is we're doing that work and the principles that we want to see represented in this document. Why wouldn't we want to incorporate those now? If the point is to adopt it and amend it, why don't we want this to be the most comprehensive version of what the public feels should be represented?
But and yet that's what it should do. It should actually point towards the gaps that are there, and then the next step is to prioritize those gaps.
So it's self-referencing in that regard. We want it to say, we need to do more work here, but this is the outcome we want to.
But you can also use the implementation strategy in May to do that as well. So we wouldn't lose sight of that. You're right, though. If it's something that's as prominent as you want it to be, Emily, you should make the change. You should propose it.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's going to be missed. Yes, it's because it's one of those things that's part of the community fabric, and it has to be part of the discussion of land use.
Yeah.
So, but it's one element. It's as part of that overall housing continuum. In fact, the housing plan goal is to redo that whole housing section, which is being updated too. So that's part of another discussion that's listed there as far as the project's concerned, and is scheduled for updating this year.
For the sake of discussion, let me just share a broader comment, and actually would love to hear from planning commissioners and from Trish on this. So in the very beginning, in the introduction, we say who is in Grand County, and we lay out 4 groups: full-time residents, tourists, part-time residents, and second home vacation homeowners and seasonal workers. And I kept coming back to this because throughout the rest of the document, we talk about residents, tourists, and businesses when referencing various priorities and various aspects of the plan. And it seems to me like our seasonal workers are segmented into the second home vacation homeowners. And to be quite honest, when we talk about businesses, when we talk about tourist businesses, we capture the tourists. I recognize we need to be mindful that a huge, huge part of our daytime population during the summer consists of tourists. But this document seems to me like it's supposed to represent the residents and the workers and the people who make their homes here full-time or part-time or seasonally, and not the people who visit. I don't think that we shouldn't consider the visitors' needs, but I just wonder why we emphasize their needs so often and we don't emphasize the needs of the people who serve them. And I kept coming back to that, and I couldn't tell if it's implied or if it's not, but it seems to me as a guiding document that we're going to return to. I want to see the needs of our seasonal workers, our full-time residents, and our part-time residents placed first. And to reference the needs of tourists in terms of how we service them to offset the cost and benefits that they bring to our economy. But to me, that's not equal. And I don't know how to.
Tourists without seasonal workers. And
Right.
Well, the whole public engagement, if I could just comment.
Please do.
The whole public engagement strategy, decision-making is centered on that. It's centered on the people that live here. It's not centered on tourists. It's not centered on the business. You don't want to ignore that part because that's a big economic engine. But it's part of that building those relationships and how that works together. And that is using the social capital that's here within the residents themselves and the tourists and the people that you can tap into as much as you can. The seasonal workers are a little more difficult sometimes, but you don't want to miss those segments. As you're mentioning, those segments are really crucial. Any resort community, I mean, we'll have somewhat unique in some ways, but any resort community would be amiss not to do that. And so the decision-making section should really be focusing on that and vetting and tapping into those resources. I'm not saying that you're off on that, Emily, but I'm thinking there's multi dimensions there, and the resident population is definitely a key part of building a plan that makes sense for the people that are here and preserving what's here, not destroying what's here. So that preservation mode, as I always say to people, if you're going to plan for something, preservation is a form of planning. Holding on to what you've got is a form of planning.
Mm-hmm.
Planning doesn't have to be change. Planning,
sure.
Yeah. So that part of it, the land use analysis, is really where that scenario planning is coming in. I know I keep coming back to that, but I'm not sure if you're getting the gist of that through the plan, but I think the core of the plan are the people that live, reside, and want and see the future. The tourists in most cases don't. I mean, businesses do because they want to stay here. Don't see the future like a resident.
So this may be too nuanced, but I do assert that on page 16 of the plan, where we talk about who's in the county, I want to see seasonal workers recognized as their own class or combined with part-time residents, not placed under second home vacation homeowners. And if anything, I'd group tourists and second homeowners together. I realize this is a small thing. It's more of a signal than a policy, but it's the very, very top of this document. And I think that
Sets the tone.
Yeah, it sets the tone. We talk about this in our small area planning and so on. How we introduce our document, our strategic plans defines what we value. And I want to make sure that our seasonal workers who make up a huge part of the character and the economic base of this county are recognized. So I realize it's small, but I will assert that change.
Interesting that trails are even included.
Yeah.
But just
You know, I just speaking as one person, I don't see the harm in making such an assertion, even if a later plan is going to incorporate such a thing. So I don't see any harm in doing it. I don't know where I stand on all of this. You know, it does seem to me that we would like to mention things that are important in the general plan. Just be willing to mention them and know that they're going to be fleshed out later. Kind of my thought on this issue. There may be other places we think are important. There are other places where maybe we can not worry about that. Let me give an example. I can't remember, John will know actually, whether I think we should have a water committee. And a water committee might not be in the plan now, but there's enough emphasis on water and water planning and making sure we have enough water as we go into the future and future growth, that I'm sure when we flesh out water, we'll have the right thing. But in this case, maybe it's good to point to it, especially if the commission feels it's not clear enough at some points.
Yeah, that should be front and center there. Actually, I think I took that comment in and added it. There's 3 or 4 different elements there again with water. Moab Area Water Partnerships one. Of course, we're dealing with different kinds of water, surface water. And then the state. Yeah.
And John, I absolutely agree. So that's been beefed up, you know, and lots of people have commented on it. So I'm very satisfied with the water section. And as we go forward, we'll, you know, probably end up with a committee at some point in the future. But I think if people feel some things, not that, because I'm okay with that, aren't beefed up enough or worried, this is probably a chance to mention them and see if we think they should be included. That's all.
It's kind of interesting to me that tourists are even like their own demographic group and are placed higher than everybody else too.
And I understand that this
Yeah.
is introducing charts and
Yeah.
graphs. Like I, in this context, I get why it's broken out, but at no place other than this do we recognize our seasonal workers as a first-class resident of Grant County. We sort of place them underneath that category. That's more what I'm getting at is I would like to see this document take a stand at the top that our residents, whether they own property or not, whether they are, you know, full-time or seasonal, that is who this plan is for. And I read this and I came to this page and it just caught me more than once. And when something catches my eye in a 200-something page document more than once, I figure it's worth bringing it up.
So do you want to make a motion on that in that regard, Emily, or what are you thinking?
I
You
don't,
want to go back to the drawing board and redraft the plan?
yes, John, I would. No, here's what I'd like. I'd like to just direct staff to make sure, this section is not the place to address it because it then lays out the charts, but I do want to direct staff before we start to recognize any breakdown of demographic groups that we explicitly state that this recognizes our seasonal workers, our full-time residents, our part-time residents, and so on as the people that this plan is meant to serve, or something to that end. Because elsewhere, especially in the land use code section, which I'm going to reserve my comments until tomorrow, but I do think it gets lost at times.
Well, you're right. And from a comprehensive perspective, who lives here and what they do here is comprehensive. It cuts across all kinds of lines. Land use is only one of them. Transportation is one. Economic development is one. There's a bunch of them. So public safety is, you know.
And they're complex. And so my comment about, for example, van life is less to do with that specific policy, which we'll address through other plans, and more to do with the fact that because we don't acknowledge that we have such a large population of these seasonal workers who make up a strong part of our community, it's easy for the conversation to miss them when talking about policy aims and priorities.
But I don't think we're going to lose sight of that.
Then let's put it in the plan.
Yeah, we could. I mean, but I think it's kind of there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be there. So, and it's not far away. So, but if you want to make or you want to direct staff to embed something, I think I'd look to you for some direction.
Okay, well, in that case, when we do make the motion, I would ask that somebody were to incorporate that into the motion, and if not, I may introduce a amendment to that motion.
Essentially, for the, throwing out sample snippets that you like, is there something that would like start that off well for you? Start that paragraph in a way that you love.
Well, I think she's actually looking at, I'm guessing, I'm not second guessing her, but I think she's looking at more of a goal or policy support. And I would say it's probably in the beginning, the decision-making section, because that way it applies to everything, pretty well everything. So, I mean, we can certainly take your advice as far as strengthening that, the goal policy area of decision-making to make sure that it's front and center.
I think that's the way to go about it. I would ask staff to please strengthen that before it goes before it comes to our next meeting, which is our workshop. And from a county commission perspective,
That's the land use workshop on 2 weeks from today. Like, this is actually going to the county commission before that.
then I would just ask that we add a goal or policy under the decision-making section explicitly stating the fact that we want to support residents of all types first and foremost, and that be incorporated into the conversation and brought to the attention of the county.
And better data is put together, gathered. And
Yes.
edited.
John. Okay, I'm done. That's it for me. My soapbox is somebody else's for the taking.
That's good.
Okay, so with that, it is 6 o'clock. We don't have anyone on to make any citizen comments. So is there any further discussion by the Planning Commission for adjustments that they'd like to see made before this is brought to the County Commission, clarification, or anything that we want to revisit at a later time?
No, I just want to echo what you were saying. That's really valuable, but
So
Not really. Sitting with us.
somebody else talking?
Good. if you want.
Nope, sorry, Obi, there's a little crosstalk in the room. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. So I just wanted to point out to John this one thing, because I think since this goes on and we're going to approve it, so here is the actual figure where it says negative growth rates in the bottom two age groups. This is probably.
Oh, I got you now. I'm getting it now. Sorry, Bob. Yeah.
You've got me now. And so
Yeah.
that's good. And I would just look at, wouldn't put this in a motion. This is kind of grammar or textual catching stuff. So I don't think
Yeah.
it needs to be in a motion. Good.
Okay. Yeah. Now we can make that change. Sure. Sorry. Go ahead, Mark. You got something.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, just also going off of what you said with the prioritization in the language. I think that would also help with engagement, changing it early on, so that people who are seasonal workers will read the plan and see that they're prioritized and jump in. With the seasonal workers grouped in with second homeowners, those are almost opposite groups in my mind. It's people without homes and it's people with double homes.
That's
So
a great point.
Very different. And yeah, I think if you change the language, you'll get more engagement.
So in case you weren't able to hear, the comment was that by recognizing the different groups explicitly, it will aid with engagement, both in people seeing themselves recognized and also in subsequent efforts to specifically engage the groups that are called out. So I think that's a great call out. We have a comment in the chat and I cannot read all of it.
To 100%.
Let's see, that is, Kaylin, did you want to come off of mute and speak to this, or would you like me to just read it to the record?
You
Go ahead.
Sure. So it's as you mentioned, it's a comprehensive document, but in my review, I didn't see that the county's commitment to 100% renewable electricity by 2030 was referenced. And I think the general plan would be a good place to reiterate that as a top level goal. And secondly, as we all know, managing the noise impacts of vehicles is a hot topic, and one that takes a lot of effort. And so I see various references to managing noise, among other impacts from various development types and transportation. But again, I think a high level goal of really setting the county priorities to protecting residents and visitors in residences against really the egregious noise impacts that we're experiencing could be useful in setting future policy and in negotiations with the state.
So I think that's a great comment. And in the sustainability section in the table, I actually, adding on to that, we do talk about light pollution and environmental pollution. I think we should call out noise pollution in the same context of property rights, not just about the quality of life impact, but the rights of property owners and renters in Grand County to have their properties be free of pollution of all types, environmental, light, and noise, giving us the ability to platform that from a place of policy.
And let me take a look at, I mean, I don't have the whole document in front of me right now, but let me take a look just to make sure it's referenced. It sounds like Kaylin's picked up on that. The sustainability section, we're hoping, I didn't want to put a commit, where are you getting the 100% renewable commitment from, Kaylin?
I don't remember what the resolution was, but in order for the county to be a participant in the Community Renewable Energy Agency, it had to make that commitment. I don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, let me look at that just to make sure. Trish, do you know? Is that?
I don't.
I know that Sarah's been on that, and I'm kind of the staff
Yeah,
rep on
maybe.
that too, but I've been missing lots of that.
That's Sarah, yeah.
Yeah, if that's one of the baselines, so we can certainly add that, because that'd be a good one to add.
The places in the document, so page 36 under sustainability, we explicitly mentioned light pollution in terms of sustainability, and I'd love to comment. I think that was where my comment had referenced that it would be good to include noise pollution as well. And then page 99, develop containment and waste management strategies to minimize all impacts is the goal. And we talk about governing light pollution and incorporating dark skies. If we're going to talk about light pollution under that goal, that's another place where I think noise pollution explicitly can be mentioned.
It's not there.
What?
It's not there in the policy. It's not there now.
I see light pollution. I do. Oh, okay. Evaluate all truck and car routes and merge with land use policy to reduce noise and dust impacts. I think we call it noise pollution. If we're going to talk about different types of pollution, the language we use.
Specific on noise, does that include barking dogs? Or just?
You know, it's really interesting. So I've been thinking about this a lot recently, because one of the things that we heard from the public when we were looking at the application that actually just came before the county commission, many of the people who spoke against that said, look, you know, I've raised cows, I've raised pigs, I have had this use in my land forever. If you create this dense residential development in my backyard, you know, people are going to tell me to get rid of my cows or my dogs. I think the difference is that when we talk about, you know, light pollution, we don't say your neighbor can never turn their lights on. When we talk about noise pollution, I bought a house in Spanish Valley. There's noise pollution from 191. I knew it was there when I moved in. It's a use that I accept. But now the people who are coming in and recreating with vehicles that go far beyond that, that to me is unreasonable, because that impact pollutes directly into my land far beyond what would be reasonable, you know, given just standard uses of the area. I'm glad we have a lawyer looking at it, because I'm not a lawyer, but like that to me is the difference. And I think just because we say I should be able to enjoy the land that I own free from the pollution of others. That doesn't mean free from all impacts. It means free from the things that fundamentally change the way that I understand my rights as a landowner and property owner. And I think that nuance doesn't get talked about enough. We talk about it in terms of quality of life and not the actual rights of the
Chris-
individuals.
Yeah, Chris Bear brought that up the other day. Do you remember that, John, about your personal property rights? And that, yeah, that could be a way to spin this, that it's,
Oh, I just want to
Yeah.
toss the question out.
yeah.
It's
no, I
a
think
great
it's
question. I think that is where the nuance is. I think that is the
Yeah.
right conversation because it is on that knife's edge. But you know, if you're my neighbor and you mow your lawn and some of your clippings reach my lawn, I'm not going to sue you. But if you start dumping your bags over the fence, I'm going to say, hey, this is unacceptable. And you know, it can't be black or white. That we have to be willing to have the conversation and shake.
Well, I think that the kind of policy that's there, reduce light pollution through continued. So what you try to do is identify a policy or regulation or demonstration, some type of action that you're going to take to mitigate. And it does get subjective. There's no question. Light does too, and noise does, obviously, but and dust does. All of those are big planning, zoning impact issues. So there's nothing wrong with reinforcing that. But Rick's right. You have to be careful how you reinforce it. In a planning document like this, it's much easier.
Yeah.
Implementing it for the challenge.
Well, but I think the public comment is right
Oh,
that
no,
we
that's
should
right.
recognize it.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Let us look at that though. I don't know how you want to direct staff, but let me take a look at that and we'll make sure that we cover it.
And I think to Kaylin's point as well, in public comment, it goes beyond vehicle routes. And as we know, it's the volume of individual vehicles. High-level goals for light pollution could be to achieve IDA dark sky community designation.
Yeah, I wasn't going to put the IDA reference in there. I just thought we'd reference dark skies policies. IDA isn't always the best at. It's not some of the, I don't think. And I don't think Flagstaff thinks that, and I don't think Tucson thinks that. And we've both been implementing for a long time.
Thank you as always to staff for entertaining the conversation. All right, any additional comments from the public as part of our hearing or from Planning Commission?
Thank you, public, Kaylin.
Representing.
Thank you, planning commissioners and staff and consultants.
Okay, with that, it is 6:11 and I will close our public hearing. Entertain a motion unless there's any additional clarification from staff, entertain a motion. And again, the motion is would be to proceed, recommend we advance the general plan to the county commission for consideration with the following directions to staff, and whatever you felt comfortable putting under there would be yours to paint. So does anybody want to make a motion?
So moved, as you said.
Want to give it a stab?
So I think Jenna was writing it down, wasn't she?
But if I caught you the whole word. I got a motion by Rick, you have to recommend we get the general plan to county commission
For consideration.
For consideration, okay.
with the recommendation that.
Do you have any additional directions to staff? Okay, so Rick has a motion on the table to recommend that we advance the Grand County General Plan 2030 to the County Commission for consideration. Is there a second? Seconded by Maketa. Any discussion? No? Okay. OB? Any discussion on this? Okay, well, I'd like to introduce a motion to amend to add a direction to staff to explicitly state in the decision-making section the goal of the general plan representing and prioritizing the needs of residents of all time, including seasonal workers first and foremost, or something to that end, language TBD by staff. So is there a second to that
I'd
motion?
love to second that.
Second by Maketa. Okay. Any discussion on that one? Are there any additional motions that anybody would like to put on the table?
We can look at the the sustainability objective, the renewable objective that Kayla mentioned. I mean, that's one of the ones. And then the noise reference.
Um,
You want to make a motion on that, or we?
Sure. So I move to amend my amendment. I think I'm going to get this, to also include explicit direction to staff to address the comments as brought up in our meeting related to the sustainability of noise pollution and dark skies, and was there, and renewable energy. Is there a second to that amendment? Seconded by Rick. All right. Any further discussion? Okay, so we'll vote on the motion to amend first. So there is a amended motion to amend, which includes direction to staff to explicitly call out the need to prioritize the needs of residents of all type in the decision-making section, to explicitly address dark skies and light pollution, and to explicitly address renewables as outlined throughout the conversation of tonight's meeting. I'll call for the vote. Made by me, seconded by Rick. All in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. Okay, that is unanimous. So any last chance, any further discussion? So with that, I'll call the vote on our motion on the table. Motion by Rick, seconded by Keta. Yes. A motion to recommend that we advance the general plan 2030 to the county commission for consideration with the following directions to staff as outlined in the amended motion, which we just covered. See YouTube. All right, all in favor, raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Okay, wonderful. I am eager to hear how that goes. Anything else we need to cover there?
I don't think so. We have a lot of things coming up. Sure.
Yes, well, just truly thank you to you and everything that your staff has done. Yes, but I remember when a year ago we were talking about this and everyone was like, so December, huh? And here we are in April. It's exciting to see this move forward. And thank you to the public and everybody who's participated so far. GrandCountyConnects.com. Okay. On it. Let's see here. I think that gets us to future considerations. Only one that came up at the start of the meeting was a thought that we might want to start live streaming these. I know a lot of people listening on YouTube, but also have had difficulty. Facebook gives you the ability to live stream on Facebook Live. I actually think it would be great to somehow through the county account or something stream Planning Commission, County Commission for people to listen in on.
Look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. Any other future considerations? Any other discussion? I'll call for a motion to adjourn, or I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. If
I
anyone
move
wants-
we adjourn.
All right, OB, seconded by Rick, all in favor? All right, thank you, everyone. Enjoy your trip. Can't believe I kept those notes.